Our News on Terror segment tonight. Today, North Korea threatened the United States with pain and suffering ahead of a vote by the United Nations on sanctions against North Korea. In recent months, North Korea has made rapid advancements in their nuclear weapons development as the rest of the world debates a proper response. And while the threat of a strike on the continental United States may not be real quite yet, North Korea could launch a different type of nuclear attack that, according to our next guest, could kill 90% of the American population. With me now from the Center for Security Policy, Frank Gaffney. Frank, thanks for being here today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
All right, Frank, that's a pretty big number. 90% of the American people dead. Explain this to us. How would this happen?
Well, and it's even more extraordinary and seemingly unbelievable when it's conceivable that it could be caused by a single nuclear detonation. The way it would work is this. A North Korea, for example, might have in space over the United States a ballistic missile, perhaps, or a satellite that could be used as the vehicle for delivering a nuclear weapon. If that weapon is detonated outside of the atmosphere, we wouldn't be affected by the blast or the heat that it generates, but the gamma rays that emanate from that weapon, when they interact with the upper atmosphere, create enormous amounts of electromagnetic energy. And if the weapon is detonated at a sufficiently high altitude, since it's what's called a line of sight phenomenon, that energy could conceivably, if at say 300 nautical miles, roughly the altitude at which two North Korean satellites are operating right now, regularly orbiting the Earth, including overflying this country, they could unleash that blast of electromagnetic pulse energy over the entire continental United States. And what a terrific national resource. I really think of it as a national treasure. The Congressional Electromagnetic Pulse Threat Commission has determined, its chairman Bill Graham found that were those pulses to have the kind of effect that the commission believes they could on an unprotected electric grid, you would see large parts of it disrupted, if not actually destroyed outright, taking perhaps a year or more to try to repair. In the course of that time, Liz, the problem is most of us, the vast majority of us, are incapable of surviving in 21st century America without electricity for a year's time, and consequently, Bill Graham estimates that 9 out of 10 of us would perish as a result of that electromagnetic pulse attack from a single nuclear weapon.
Right, it's so phenomenal, it seems almost unbelievable, but it makes sense. We rely so heavily on refrigeration for our food, to clean our water. We rely on it for hospitals, for, everything that we do for a livelihood. Our financial systems would collapse, let alone, the care that we give to our families every single day that relies on electricity. It does sound crazy, but let me ask you, Frank, do we have any capacity to defend against this type of attack? Would we even know that this attack had happened before it impacted us?
Well, again, it depends on how it's unleashed. If it's a ballistic missile that is launched from North Korea, yes, we would have considerable warning that the weapon is coming our way. If it's from a short-range missile, and this is one of the scenarios that this EMP Threat Commission evaluated, say launched off of a ship near our shores, and the North Koreans appear to have been sort of doing dress rehearsals for that kind of launch, then you would have a very short period of time as that ballistic missile comes up over parts of the United States. But frankly, worst of all, if they actually have nuclear weapons on these satellites that are up there now, well, one could be detonated at any time while it's overflying the United States. Interestingly enough, as you may remember, Liz, at the Super Bowl earlier this year, one of those North Korean satellites flew over the game, as I recall, shortly after it ended, as it happens. But that kind of scenario, that kind of vehicle for unleashing an electromagnetic pulse on us, we wouldn't have any warning at all before it happened, and what we could do about it is somewhat limited at this point.
Right, and I guess it's that kind of presence in the satellite that a lot of, I guess, more conservative experts were warning about when North Korea launched these satellites in the first place. They warned that they weren't really about scientific. They didn't have a scientific agenda. They had a nuclear agenda here. Frank, if this is an existential threat to our nation, and Kim Jong-un has mentioned EMP attacks, this is not just something we pulled out of the woodwork and said, oh, North Korea could do this. The North Korean press agency brought up this type of attack themselves. If this is the possibility of an existential threat against our nation, which 9 out of 10 Americans dying would be, does this warrant military action against them to prevent this?
Well, I think it warrants a couple of things, Liz. Most immediately, it warrants steps to try to protect the electric grid from this kind of threat. We've been warning of this, particularly this EMP commission, since 2004. There are some practical recommendations. Not many of them are very quickly implemented, but some could be done fairly quickly, and we ought to be about that as the utmost national priority. We also have means of, I think, defeating a missile if it is headed our way, and those capabilities ought to be enhanced. I personally believe we ought to take down those satellites. You know, as you said, there is some expert opinion, notably the former director of the Central Intelligence Agency under Bill Clinton, Jim Woolsey, one of our other colleagues, Dr. Peter Vincent Pry, who've been saying there's circumstantial evidence that those satellites may already have nuclear weapons aboard. If they don't, we do know that Kim Jong-il has not only threatened us with EMP attack, he has called in some of the earlier thrashing around about the threats and the countervailing pressure by President Trump, that he wanted more satellites up there right away. So that's another clue. But the point is that I think these are indeed existential threats to our country, and they require, if not preemptive military action, which nobody wants, certainly steps to try to ensure that this kind of damage is not unleashed on us at the whim of a maniac like Kim Jong-un.
Right, a crazy dictator. I've been frustrated myself listening to all the condemnation from people on both sides of the aisle, from pundits to, talking heads to actual elected officials. There's plenty of condemnation to go around. There's not enough solutions. People are afraid, I guess, to present solutions. And Frank, I appreciate you doing just that. Thanks for being here.